February 14, 1974. RCA Studio B, Nashville, Tennessee. 3:17 a.m. Elvis sits alone in the vocal booth. The studio is dark, empty. No engineers, no producers, no band, no Memphis Mafia. No one. Just Elvis, and a microphone, and a reel-to-reel machine running in the corner. He hasn't told anyone he's here. The building manager gave him the key weeks ago. A favor. No questions asked. Elvis's hands rest on his knees. His head tilts back. Eyes closed, breathing slow. On the music stand in front of him sits a single sheet of paper. Handwritten lyrics, smudged pencil marks, crossouts, rewrites. This isn't a song from his gospel album sessions. This isn't something Colonel Parker approved. This isn't something RCA scheduled. This is something else, something private. His voice breaks the silence. Quiet at first. Testing. The words that come out aren't performance. They're confession. Quick thought. Have you ever prayed when no one else could hear you? Drop a comment. What happens in the next 18 minutes will reveal a side of Elvis Presley the world never saw. Here is the story. The studio feels colder at night. Elvis arrived 90 minutes ago. Drove himself. No bodyguards, no driver. Just him and a black Cadillac parked in the alley behind the building. He unlocked the door with shaking hands. Not from cold, from something deeper. The control room lights stay off. He doesn't need them. He knows this studio by memory. Recorded here 37 times since 1960. Knows which floorboards creak, which corner has the best echo, which microphone captures the low register of his voice. He sets up the tape machine himself, threading the reel through the heads, checking levels, setting the speed to 15 inches per second. Studio quality. This matters. Whatever he records tonight needs to be perfect. Not for an album, not for release, not for anyone but himself, and maybe God. He tests the microphone, taps it twice. The sound echoes through the empty space. Satisfied, he walks to the vocal booth. The glass door closes behind him with a soft click. He stands there, waiting. For what, he doesn't know. Courage, maybe. Permission. Or just the right moment. The song he's about to sing doesn't have a title yet. He wrote it 6 days ago, February 8th, late night at Graceland. Couldn't sleep. Priscilla had called earlier that day. Not about Lisa Marie. About lawyers. About divorce papers. About moving on. Her voice on the phone sounded distant, polite, like talking to a stranger. After the call, Elvis walked through Graceland alone. Every room felt too big, too empty, too much space for one person. He ended up in the music room, sat at the piano, the same white baby grand he's played for years. His fingers found chords without thinking, slow, mournful, gospel progression. The melody came first, simple, 4 chords repeating. Then words, fragments at first, then lines, then verses. He wrote them down on hotel stationery, Graceland letterhead, blue ink. The song isn't about Priscilla. It isn't about fame. It isn't about music. It's about being lost, about feeling like you've wandered so far from home you don't remember the way back, about calling out in the dark and wondering if anyone hears. The gospel songs Elvis grew up singing in Tupelo always promised answers, peace, salvation, light. This song doesn't promise anything. It just asks, are you still there? Can you still hear me? Am I too far gone? In the vocal booth, Elvis opens his eyes. The microphone stands 3 feet away. Neumann U-47. Same one he used on How Great Thou Art. He takes a breath, holds it, releases. Then he begins. His voice starts barely above a whisper. The melody is haunting. Minor key. Slow tempo. The words describe a man standing at the edge of something. A cliff, a shore, a boundary. Behind him, everything he's ever known. Fame, success, love that once felt real. Ahead, only darkness. And the question, do I step forward? Do I turn back? Or do I just stand here forever? Elvis's voice grows stronger as the verse continues. No vibrato, no showmanship, no Elvis the performer, just Elvis the man. 39 years old, divorced, lonely, searching. The first verse ends. Silence. He breathes. The tape keeps rolling. Nobody knows he's here tonight. Not even Joe Esposito. Not Red West. Not Jerry Schilling. He told everyone he was tired, going to bed early, needed rest. They believed him. Why wouldn't they? Elvis has become an expert at hiding pain behind performance, hiding doubt behind charisma, hiding fear behind the image of the king. But tonight, no hiding, just him. And this song, and the question of whether faith can survive when everything else falls apart. The second verse begins. His voice cracks on the third line. He doesn't stop, doesn't start over. The crack stays. It's honest. The lyrics describe a prayer that feels like it hits the ceiling and falls back down. Words spoken into empty air. The fear that maybe God stopped listening, or maybe never was. This is dangerous territory for Elvis. Gospel music is his foundation. The church in Tupelo where Mama took him every Sunday. The Assembly of God hymns that shaped his understanding of music itself. The promise that no matter how lost you get, grace can find you. But what if that promise is just a story? What if the prodigal son comes home and the father's house is empty? Elvis doesn't sing these questions with anger. He sings them with exhaustion. The exhaustion of a man who's tried everything and nothing works, who's succeeded at everything except being happy, who has the world but lost himself. The chorus arrives. 4 lines, simple, direct. The core question repeated 3 times with slight variations. Are you still there? Are you still listening? Am I still yours? Then silence. Just the hum of the tape machine. Elvis stands completely still, eyes closed again, tears on his face now. He doesn't wipe them away. This isn't the first time Elvis has poured his heart into gospel music. His Grammy Awards, all 3 of them, all for gospel recordings. How Great Thou Art in 1967. He Touched Me in 1972. How Great Thou Art album in 1974. The world knows Elvis, the gospel singer, the man who could make Peace in the Valley sound like the most important song ever written, who could bring an entire arena to tears with You'll Never Walk Alone. But those were public performances, recorded in professional sessions, surrounded by musicians, choirs, producers nodding approval. This is different. This is private. This is Elvis talking to God with no audience, no approval needed, no performance expected, just the raw question, are you there? Third verse. His voice drops lower. The words paint a picture of a stage. Empty seats, dead lights, silence. The metaphor is obvious. Elvis is the stage, once filled with light and sound and the roar of crowds. Now just quiet, waiting. For what? Applause that will never come? Or something else? Something that doesn't need an audience? His voice rises on the bridge. The melody shifts. Major key. Brief moment of light. The lyrics describe a memory, being a child. Mama's voice singing, "Precious Lord, take my hand while washing dishes." The certainty of that moment. The simplicity. The faith that didn't need to be questioned because it just was. Then back to minor. Back to the present, where that certainty is gone. And the question remains. The tape machine clicks as the first reel runs out. Elvis stops singing, walks to the machine, flips the reel, threads the second one, starts recording again, returns to the booth, continues. This time, no written lyrics, just improvisation, words coming from somewhere beyond thought. He sings about walking through Graceland at night, every room a museum of a life he doesn't recognize anymore. Gold records on the walls, photos of himself with presidents, awards, headlines, proof of success. But whose success? The boy from Tupelo? or someone he invented to survive? And now that the invention is all people see, where did the boy go? Quick thought. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Drop a comment. 4:30 a.m. Elvis has been singing for over an hour. His voice is raw. The song has no structure anymore. It's become a prayer, a conversation. Sometimes he's singing to God, sometimes to himself, sometimes to Mama, sometimes to the darkness. He talks about the pills, the ones that keep him awake, the ones that help him sleep, the ones that make performing possible, the ones that make everything worse. He doesn't use the word addiction. That word requires admission. He just describes being trapped, needing something to feel normal, knowing that normal is gone. The recording continues. Elvis sits down on the floor of the vocal booth now, back against the wall, microphone tilted down toward him. He's not singing anymore, just talking, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if you're listening, but I'm still here. I don't know if I'm too far gone, but I'm still trying. I don't know if this matters, but I needed to say it. The tape runs out. Click. Silence. Elvis doesn't move. He sits there in the dark. 5 minutes pass. 10. Finally, he stands, walks to the control room, stops the machine, removes both reels, places them carefully in their metal cases, writes on the lid, February 14th, 1974. Personal. Nothing else. No song title. No notes. Just the date and one word. Personal. He leaves the studio the same way he came. Alone. Through the back door. Into the alley. The Cadillac is still there. Cold. He drives back to Graceland. Arrives at dawn. The gates open automatically. He parks. Walks inside. Takes the tape reels to his bedroom. Places them in the closet. Behind the clothes. Behind the shoes, where no one will find them. Then he lies down, fully dressed, stares at the ceiling, and falls asleep. 3 years pass. Elvis never mentions the recording, not to his band, not to his producers, not to anyone. He returns to RCA Studio B multiple times. Records Promised Land, records My Boy, records dozens of songs, but never that one. The gospel song he sang alone at 3 a.m., the confession, the question, the prayer without an answer. It stays hidden, in the closet, behind the clothes, behind the shoes, forgotten, or maybe just too personal to share. August 16th, 1977. Elvis dies at Graceland. The world stops. Fans gather at the gates, thousands, then tens of thousands. The media descends. Everyone wants to know everything about his life, his death, his final days, his legacy. In the chaos, people go through Graceland, family, staff, estate managers. They catalog everything, every possession, every recording, every document. The tape reels in the closet are found, labeled February 14th, 1974. Personal. They're placed in a box with other unmarked recordings. Moved to storage, filed away. No one knows what's on them. No one checks. They're just 2 more reels among thousands. 30 years later. A music historian named Dr. William Anderson gets access to the Graceland archives. He's researching Elvis's gospel recordings for a book. Wants to document every session, every take, every gospel song Elvis ever recorded. He finds the box of unmarked reels, asks permission to listen. The estate agrees. Most are alternate takes of known songs, studio chatter, warm-ups, nothing significant. Then he finds the reels marked February 14th, 1974. He threads them onto a player, presses play, and hears Elvis's voice, alone, raw, singing a song that doesn't exist in any catalog, a song no one knew about. Dr. Anderson listens to the entire recording, both reels, over 90 minutes. When it ends, he sits in silence. He's spent 40 years studying Elvis, written 3 books, listened to thousands of hours of recordings. But this is different. This is Elvis without the armor, without the persona, without anything between him and the truth. Dr. Anderson writes about the discovery, but the estate doesn't release the recording. Too personal, they say. Not meant for public consumption. Elvis recorded it for himself, for God, not for the world. Dr. Anderson respects the decision. He includes a brief mention in his book, one paragraph, describing the discovery, the date, the fact that Elvis was alone, that it was a gospel song, original composition, never performed again, never mentioned. He doesn't quote lyrics, doesn't describe the emotion in Elvis's voice, doesn't reveal the content of the prayer, just acknowledges it exists, and that it remains private. Today, the tape sits in climate-controlled storage, Graceland Archives, Box 247, Shelf 12, 2 reels in metal cases. The label still reads, February 14th, 1974. Personal, exactly as Elvis wrote it, 43 years after his death. The song he sang alone at 3 a.m. has been heard by fewer than 10 people. Family members with clearance, estate managers, Dr. Anderson, a few archivists. That's it. No bootleg has ever surfaced. No leaked copy exists. It remains what Elvis intended. Personal. So what was on that recording? The people who've heard it describe it carefully. They respect the privacy, but they offer glimpses. Dr. Anderson says it's the most vulnerable Elvis ever was on tape, more than any interview, more than any performance, more than any other recording. An estate manager who heard it says it's heartbreaking, not because Elvis sounds sad, but because he sounds lost, searching, still believing, but struggling to hold on. A family member who listened says it's beautiful, musically simple, emotionally complex. The kind of song that makes you understand gospel music isn't about perfection, it's about reaching toward something bigger than yourself, even when you can't see it, even when you doubt it's there. The decision to keep it private has been debated. Some argue the world deserves to hear it, that it would deepen understanding of Elvis, show his spiritual journey, his humanity, his struggle with faith and fame. Others argue the opposite, that Elvis chose not to share it for a reason, that some things should remain sacred, that the most intimate moments of a person's life don't belong to the public, even when that person is Elvis Presley. The estate has maintained the latter position. The tape will not be released, not now, maybe not ever, but the fact that it exists changes something. It means that on February 14th, 1974, at 3:17 a.m., Elvis Presley sat alone in a recording studio and did something extraordinary. He was honest, completely, devastatingly, courageously honest. He sang a song no one would hear, prayed a prayer with no audience, searched for God in the darkness, not for applause, not for approval, not for sales, just for himself. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the most important things we do are the ones no one sees, the prayers we whisper when we're alone, the tears we cry in the dark, the moments we're vulnerable with no one watching. Those moments don't need to be recorded, don't need to be shared, don't need to become content. They just need to happen. And they did. In Studio B, at 3 a.m., on a February night in 1974. Elvis continued recording gospel music after that night. He won his 3rd Grammy for How Great Thou Art later that same year. He performed gospel songs in every concert, made them part of every show. The connection to that music never left him, but he never recorded that particular song again, never sang it for anyone, never mentioned it existed. It remained his secret, his private conversation with something beyond himself. And when he died 3 years later, that secret was locked away, behind clothes, behind shoes, in a closet in Graceland, waiting to be discovered by someone who would understand its value, not as entertainment, but as evidence of a soul still reaching, still questioning, still hoping, even in the loneliest hours, even when no one was listening. Today, if you visit Graceland, you can see the gold records, The jumpsuits, the cars, the awards, the proof of Elvis's success. But you can't hear that recording. You can't access that moment. You can only know it existed. And maybe that's enough. Maybe knowing that Elvis Presley, at the height of fame, in the depths of loneliness, still believed enough to sing to God at 3 a.m. That's the legacy, not the tape itself, but what it represents, faith that persists, even when everything else falls apart. Hope that survives, even when the lights go out, a voice that still calls, even when the answer seems far away. The engineers who worked at RCA Studio B during those years remember something. They'd arrive in the morning sometimes and find evidence someone had been there overnight. A microphone moved, levels adjusted on the board, an ashtray with fresh cigarette butts. They never questioned it. Elvis had a key. He could use the studio whenever he wanted, but they wondered what he was doing there, alone, in the middle of the night. Now we know, at least once, at least that night in February. He was singing, recording, praying, searching for something he couldn't find anywhere else. Not in performance, not in applause, not in fame, only in silence, only in honesty, only in the dark. The song itself, the one Elvis wrote and sang that night, reportedly contains no chorus in the traditional sense, just verses that circle the same questions. Are you there? Can you hear me? Am I lost? And between the verses, long silences. Elvis breathing, thinking, gathering courage to continue. Those silences, according to Dr. Anderson, are as powerful as the music. Maybe more. They represent the space between question and answer, the gap between reaching and receiving, the moment when faith is most fragile and most real. In gospel music, there's a tradition called testifying, standing before the congregation and speaking your truth, your struggle, your journey, your relationship with God, raw, unpolished, real. That recording from February 14, 1974, is Elvis testifying, but not to a congregation, to himself, to God, to the darkness, to whatever might be listening. It's the testimony he couldn't give publicly, the vulnerability he couldn't show on stage, the doubt he couldn't voice in interviews, all captured on magnetic tape, spinning at 15 inches per second, preserving a moment of absolute truth. Quick thought. What would you pray for if no one was listening? Drop a comment. Some people argue that keeping the tape private diminishes its value, that art belongs to the world, that Elvis's legacy should include all of him, not just the polished parts. But maybe privacy has value too. Maybe not everything needs to be consumed. Maybe some moments are sacred precisely because they remain unseen. The tape's value isn't in what it could offer the public. It's in what it meant to Elvis. A moment of pure expression. No expectations, no performance, no Elvis the King. Just Elvis the man, alone with his faith, his doubt, his hope, his fear, and his voice, still singing, still believing, still reaching. Even at 3 a.m., even when no one was listening. The equipment Elvis used that night still exists. The Neumann U47 microphone is in the Country Music Hall of Fame. The tape machine was sold at auction in 1989. A collector in Germany owns it now. The vocal booth was remodeled in 1982, but the studio itself remains. RCA Studio B, now a historic landmark. Tours run daily. Visitors stand where Elvis stood. Imagine his voice filling the space. But they don't know about that night. Most don't. The tour guides mention his gospel recordings, talk about the Grammys, show photos from the sessions, but they don't mention February 14th, 1974. That story isn't part of the official narrative. It's too small, too personal, too private. And maybe that's how it should be. Elvis's relationship with gospel music was complicated by success. The songs that connected him to God as a child became performances as an adult, staged, rehearsed, produced. The spontaneity was lost, the intimacy compromised. But that night in Studio B, he reclaimed something: the directness, the honesty, the connection between singer and song. No mediation, no production, no performance, just voice and truth. And in that moment, however briefly, Elvis was no longer the king. He was the boy from Tupelo again, singing in church, believing without question, reaching without fear, connected to something larger than fame, larger than music, larger than himself. The recording has never been bootlegged, never leaked, never stolen. In an age where everything eventually surfaces, it remains hidden, protected, respected. Some believe copies exist, secret duplicates made years ago, stored in private collections. But nothing has ever been verified. No one has come forward claiming to have it. The tape remains where Elvis left it, in the archives, behind security, behind protocol, behind the decision that some things are more valuable unreleased. Dr. Anderson was asked in an interview if he thought the recording should ever be made public. He paused for a long time, then said this: "I believe Elvis recorded that song for God, not for us. And I think we should respect that. The world has enough Elvis, enough performances, enough recordings, enough merchandise. Let him keep this one thing. Let it remain between him and whatever he was reaching for in the dark." The interviewer pushed back, asked if the public has a right to know, to hear, to understand Elvis completely. Dr. Anderson smiled, shook his head. "We can never understand anyone completely, not even ourselves. What we can do is respect the parts they chose to keep private. That's not hiding the truth. That's honoring the person." Today, 51 years after that recording was made, it continues to exist in silence, unheard, unknown to most, but real. As real as any performance Elvis gave to millions. Maybe more real, because it wasn't for millions. It was for one, himself, or God, or the space between doubt and faith. And that space is sacred, worth protecting, worth keeping private. If you could listen to that recording, what would you hear? Based on the accounts of those who have, you'd hear a voice you recognize, but different. Stripped of technique, stripped of performance, raw. You'd hear silences that feel eternal, pauses that hold more than words. You'd hear a man searching, not finding, just searching. You'd hear faith tested, not destroyed, not confirmed, just tested. You'd hear loneliness, the kind that no amount of fame can fill. You'd hear hope, fragile, persistent, refusing to die. You'd hear Elvis Presley, not the icon, not the legend, not the king, just the man, singing in the dark, hoping someone hears, even if that someone is only himself. And perhaps that's the real story. Not what's on the tape, but why it exists. Not what Elvis sang, but that he sang it all. At 3 a.m., alone. When he could have done anything else. Slept, taken pills, called friends, performed for someone, anyone. Instead, he chose this, a private moment with his deepest self, his truest voice, his most vulnerable question. Are you still there? And even though we don't know if he found his answer that night, we know he asked. We know he tried. We know he believed enough to sing. And maybe that's all faith ever is, singing in the dark, hoping, reaching, continuing, even when no one's listening, especially when no one's listening. Because that's when it's most real. The tape will likely remain unreleased for the foreseeable future. The Graceland estate has no plans to change their position. They see it as respecting Elvis's privacy, honoring his intention, protecting a sacred moment. And while fans may disagree, while historians may want access, while curiosity may persist, the decision stands. Some things belong to the person who created them. Some moments deserve to remain private. Some prayers don't need an audience. On February 14th every year, a small group of Elvis fans gather at RCA Studio B. Not officially, no organized event, just people who know the story. They stand outside, silent, for a few minutes at 3 a.m., honoring a moment they've never heard, respecting a recording they'll never access, understanding that some gifts aren't meant to be opened, some songs aren't meant to be shared, some faith is too personal for public consumption. They stand, they remember, they honor, then they leave, and the studio returns to silence. The same silence Elvis found that night. The silence where honest questions echo, where true prayers rise, where the soul speaks without performance. That silence remains. 51 years later, still sacred, still protected, still real. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Elvis Presley anymore. Men willing to be that vulnerable, that honest, that brave, alone in a studio at 3 a.m., recording their doubts, their fears, their hope, not for fame, not for legacy, just for truth. The tape nobody heard proves something important. Not all value is measured in listeners. Not all meaning requires an audience. Not all art needs to be consumed. Sometimes the most important thing we create is the thing we keep to ourselves. The prayer only we hear. The song only we sing. The moment only we know. And that's okay. More than okay. That's sacred.